Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. He who continually goes forth weeping, bearing seed for sowing, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him. Even the Bible recognizes the relevance of food in sustaining human life. It is not surprising that many passages in the Holy Book have the imagery of the fields and harvesters as well as livestock. The passage in Psalms 126 expresses a basic principle that can be applied to serving the Lord. When it comes to the service of the Lord, who can take up the task other than the Christian church? The church in the secular society is often on the margins, and its contributions to elevating socio-economic ills such as hunger are insignificant when compared against governments and corporate organizations. The church is viewed as failing her members because far too often, as a non-profit making body, it struggles to implement its agenda in a world that is driven by cash power. However, the psalmist gives hope that if the church can strive even in her littlest step to sow the seed of hope, in the ultimate she can bring forth the sheaves and feed millions of people who go hungry on a daily basis. Currently, the United Nations 2013 fact sheet reveals that 1 in every 8 people in the world experiences extreme hunger. Obviously, the church cannot take the back seat and pin her hopes on the governments and private sectors to address the menace that is hunger without her active participation and involvement. Against this backdrop, a collaborative strategy between the United Nations and the Organization of African Instituted Churches bore the 2012 Feed the Nations Conference in Nairobi, bringing together farmers, church leaders and advocacy bodies concerned with ending hunger to implement strategies that can set our populations hunger-free before the UN Millennium Development Goals target year of 2015. It is estimated that some 800 million people in the world suffer from hunger and malnutrition, about 100 times as many as those who actually die from it each year. Asia and Africa are the hardest hit, with half of world children population under 5 years of age in South Asia and 1/3 of those in Sub-Saharan Africa classified as malnourished. Worse still, Africa and the rest of Asia together account for approximately 40% of the world peoples who know the pangs of extreme hunger on a daily basis.
My name is Emmanuel. I work for a religious organization. My question therefore is, how can religious leaders like us participate in some of your consultations that are in Africa? I ask this in view of the fact that knowledge and literacy, education materials concerning nutrition are not widely possibly available. And so if we must be effective advocates, we will therefore need meaningful participation in processes that enhances and empowers us to be able to do this.
The church as an organization in the human society needs and must actively engage in acts that positively touch human lives, and one of them involves producing and supplying food to the human race. Jesus, whom the church models, fed the hungry and clothed the naked. The church can step up to the plate and take its rightful place to end hunger.
Since you know much about nutrition, we deal about a crop called grain amaranthus. Maybe you've ever heard of it. The organization is called Ghana Amaranthus Uganda Limited. So I would like you to give us more light in case if you have market, because we are doing it for the community. They have tried very well. You can go ahead and you can get for us somewhere, some other market outside, or if not, you can give us any light on that, maybe on the processing part of it. And because we are already trying it, but we lack other facilities like the seed cleaners and other things, so you can give us some light on it to help us and make us reach where you people have reached. Because I know everyone starts small, and as years go, we become big.
The mission of the church is not only to proclaim the word of God to people with hungry stomachs. Rather, the real ministry and action demands that the church be a feeder of nations. But all is not lost. While the church as a non-profit entity is finding it tough to get the foodstuffs readily available to world citizens because the competition with corporate bodies tilts the scales against the church and her agenda to eliminate hunger. Some strides are beginning to show.
We are living around Lake Victoria, the fresh lake in Africa, where we get many fish, plenty of it. But what I wonder is that we don't eat that fish. It's been taken with the middleman. We remain only with the skeleton, and that is Ugongowasi. Is that not serious? Now, in the next side, we are planting cotton, and this is the best crop in our region, because our region is dry. We don't have enough rain. Now, last year we were told by the Kodak that they will be collecting cotton from us, and the price will be up. And they say that they will pay us 65 shillings per kilo. We waited October, December, then in March, they come and say that no, they are not going to pay us 65 shillings, they are going to pay us 25 shillings. Is that not serious? Now, what makes me worry is that my granny had a store called granary for keeping the crops we harvest. Now that granary was kept, the order must be from the granny. When there's problem of fund is when we use that crop. That means we have to store that crop waiting for the fine. Is that serious?
Harsh climatic conditions prevalent in Africa make it common for its people to suffer from prolonged hunger.
From this conference, there are a number of things. I would say one, at me as a person, and again as NASFAM, an organization. As a person, I know that I have the technical ability to feed into my church back home, because I've come here as a smallholder farmers representative. But as an individual, I have the capacity to influence programs in the church to respond to the food security. Now, as NASFAM, I'm happy that the church is on our side, because if there's a campaign, maybe trying to lobby the policy makers on some policies on nutrition security, if they fail, we know that that part is not only for us as smallholder farmers, but the church is also on our side. So it is a very good development. Yes.
A distinction has been made between supplying food and providing people with nutrition. What is your take on that?
It is true. You know, nutrition security is not about the availability of food. You can have the food, but the way you prepare that food may remove all the nutrients from that food. You find that it's not about the quantity of the food you take, it's about the nutrients in that food. So one can have a large amount of food, but become malnourished. So people should start seeing that difference, that availability of food does not necessarily all the time translate to food security.
What role can the church play in addressing hunger?
The church can do a lot. In the first place, the church has got members. So those members need to eat, because an empty stomach filled member of the church will not take the message, the gospel, seriously. So because of that, the church has a role to make sure that there is good nutrition and agriculture is moving on well. Secondly, can you come again?
What role can the church play in addressing hunger?
So, because of its ability, because it has the resource, the people inside the church, it can also pass on that same message. You know, the people go to church to get the gospel, but at the same time, maybe you never know, they have no another place where they can get such information, maybe extension to food and nutrition. So if the church gets that message and passes it on to its members, they can get that information very well.
Beautiful. Yeah. One last. Let's talk partnerships. Who do you see the church partnering with in order to address the problem of hunger?
The beauty with the church is that it has the ability, that spiritual element gives it to be the best fighter in this battle. You know, the government in most cases and other partners, they respect people who fight, but in a constructive way. That is the identity of the church. The church will not sit and start abusing people like the politicians and other stakeholders. So that is a very big strength of the church, because if the church talks, people listen. And even the government, if the church opens a mouth, the government listens. So any battle on food and nutrition security, on agriculture as a whole, if it is taken up by the church, I'm sure it will be accepted and respected by the government.
But the church and farmers are learning to appreciate the distinction between production of food and supply chain of food to the needy. We'll get there someday. The UN MDG Objective Number 1 is concerned with halving between 1990 and 2015 the proportion of people whose income is less than $1.25 a day. The target of reducing extreme poverty rates by half was met 5 years ahead of the 2015 deadline. The global poverty rate at $1.25 a day fell in 2010 to less than half the 1990 rate. 700 million fewer people lived in conditions of extreme poverty in 2010 than in 1990. However, at the global level, 1.2 billion people are still living in extreme poverty.
The existing situations, as in trying to correct them as they are,
Yes.
but that it should be institutionalized.
Yes.
That is what I'm trying to say, is that justice should not be a situation just where two people are in an argument and you come and say, okay, this one is in the wrong, this one is in the right. It should go beyond that to where we institutionalize it in our statute books, in our offices, and we should make it a way of life.
Yes, justice must be a way, just like Christ did, or just like we read it in the book of Isaiah, or the Old Testament text, where justice is emphasized. So it must be institutionalized. Okay, and to the state, to the country, to the people. Again, what is justice?
I tend to think that because when we were talking about the structural injustice, we talked about criminalizing the powerless. Then there was the reading yesterday where I told you that I mentioned about Jesus, where Jesus was brought up committing adultery with the man. And then there was no justice because the man was not brought. Then Jesus did not comment about the act.
Yes.
So can you say that that one was injustice, and justice could have been, they could have been just if they brought the two?
Both of yes.
Both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Can we use that one as gender injustice?
Yes.
As one of the structural injustices we have identified? Because they are talking of one which we have identified. Number 4, can we identify one, that one, gender injustice?
Can I ask? Yes, yes, I agree with you. But why did they leave?
They felt that they have already, they are doing injustice to one and not to the other.
Beyond that, yes, to some extent, structural, I agree with that, because in the Old Testament Jewish law, the woman always bears the brunt. Actually, the immediate, beyond the structural issue, Christ pointed out, Christ asked them, if any of you is guiltless of the same crime, then cast the first stone. So, they had also been doing what the woman did. And their conscience simply told them, guys, you can't do this. Beyond the structural thing. So, I think she's correct, but it also goes beyond that.
Yes. Can we elaborate a little bit more on institutional justice?
What I mean when I say...
And also think of countries where there are a lot of injustices. Practice.
Okay. When I say institutional justice, if we take even for instance the US, that's at the forefront of preaching about work justice for everybody, you discover that if you go to a lot of states in the US, particularly the southern states, there is what we call pay inequality between the man and the woman. You see a woman doing the same work as a man. At the end of the day, she's paid less than the man earns. This is one of the institutional injustices you find in the US. Then when you come to Africa, the examples are numerous. You don't engage women in certain kinds of jobs, not because they cannot do it. You engage people, pay less, even though they work more, because they are women. A whole lot of things in Africa, you know.
Before I come to you, I was thinking of do we ever try to look into the constitutions of our countries and try to find out what is in it? I know we're talking of policies, but the constitutions, do they really contain some points whereby we can be able to correct and challenge those who are doing wrong?
Because I institutionalize, it's difficult.
Yeah.
For instance, in Nigeria, presently, the Chief Justice of the Federation, that is the highest judge that we have in Nigeria, is a woman. But she cannot bail somebody from the police station because she's a woman. Yet, as a judge, she has the power of life and death.
Yes.
You know, but she cannot take, even if he's on a charge of fighting, she can't bail you. Because the Nigerian constitution does not allow a woman to bail somebody. So if I'm taken away for any reason, and my wife comes to the station to bail me, they will ask her to go and bring somebody. She could go and bring my son. You know, my son will come and bail me, but she can't bail me.
This morning we have looked at three things. We have looked at MDG, we have looked at justice, and we have looked at distributive justice. Three things we have looked at. We have looked at the MDG, we have looked at justice, injustice, and distributive justice. Distributive justice. Those are the three things. And we said one of the reasons why MDG cannot be achieved is because of corruption, ignorance on MDG, and lack of political will. You quickly go to talk about if we don't achieve MDG, we remain in deep suffering. Justice is not done because of lack of access.
With this, what I recap is that from our discussion this morning, when we say, for example, when we discuss about MDG, and there are the problem what we cannot implement MDG as it is, because there is ignorance and corruption. We have to share what we have equally. To share what we have equally means, for example, we have a good saying, for example, like Arambe, Ubuntu, and we have to share what we have. The word of God says that we can share what we have with our neighbors. The Bible says, love your neighbors, and we have to share what we have. This is what we discussed shortly this morning. Thank you.
However, the red tapes inherent in the system, such as heavy taxation, force African farmers and the church to get better organized and lobby their governments to subsidize the agricultural sector.
In a group form, and the members define justice as doing what is right according to God. Others will the view that justice may mean to do things in a fair manner to human beings. And also, we looked at the concept of justice in the African context, and people suggested that it means restoration. For example, in some African communities, if somebody killed somebody or a daughter, that community would demand the replacement by another daughter. And in that way, there would be the power of reconciliation through restoration. Also, we looked at justice in the family as fairness in the family, where the husband and a wife help one another in carrying out their duties, especially the working families. Another area where we looked at is that children's rights were to be respected if there was to be justice in the family, and personal responsibility for the action taken by family members. And justice in the church was looked at church members treating each other fairly, and in the community, the members suggest that policies should be fair to take concerns of the community. At national, also, we reflected on fair policies, including personal responsibility of people in authority for their actions they take. We also looked at sustainable development, and we interpreted it to mean where man takes care of the environment. And hunger was looked at as going without food, not because you want to, but because you don't have what to eat. And other members also looked at it differently, that there are some people who lack the initiatives to provide for themselves. So hunger is not maybe involuntary, but it can be voluntary if you don't take the initiative to use your hands. Global hunger was looked at as countries failing to feed their populations. Because of time factor, yesterday we didn't look more of the other questions. I would like to look at what we have discussed today.
Today, across Africa, regimes tend to embed structural and institutional injustices that make food production and supply an uphill battle. The church cannot remain docile in the midst of this despair. It is the duty of the church to challenge governments and regimes to embrace justice in providing food to Africa.